It says off air. Oh, now we're live.
Okay, welcome to our live stream over here at Pixel Fondue. I think we are going now. We've got Shane, the senior product manager. Whoop, and now Greg is turning down his volume on the YouTube page. Okay. We've got I knew that was gonna happen too, but it can't let
we didn't actually hear it.
Okay. It doesn't let me turn just right here. Okay. Doesn't let me turn the volume down until it actually starts streaming so that I hear what I said 2 seconds earlier. Okay, well, we're live, so I should shut up. We got Shane, the senior product manager for MODO. Of course, and Matt Cox, the primary MODO architect and principal software engineer at Foundry. And master Rich Hurrey there in the middle. Been putting out all kinds of rigging videos lately. And yeah, so here we go. So it's a little weird. We're doing a live stream with a beta release. And so I just want to get this out of the way right off the bat. This is going to be really focused on this beta release and some very specific features on this beta release. And so we're going to let Shane and kind of guide us where to get that and talk a little bit about the goals of this release. And, you know, Rich and Matt, who've been working together a bit on this latest release, along with some other people talking about what their goals are and really what we need from the community in terms of really testing this release and having a great final release once we're done with this beta. So a couple things I want to get out of the way really quickly. And first of all, it's 300 degrees here in California. So I'm trying to I came into my office this morning and it was just sweltering. And I was like, oh God, what's going on? The building's out or something like that. And I have all these computers here. And I look at my thermostat and it's just blank. And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm screwed. I got this live stream. I got to turn off all my servers. And then apparently it just ran out of batteries. Like, when the batteries on the thermostat go out, the entire air conditioning system goes out. So it's great system here when you got a $50,000 of hardware sitting around. Okay, so before we do this real quick, I do want to. There's a couple news items here in the MODO community. Just let me share my screen.
Some really cool partner stuff. Just today, actually, literally too.
Today, right. So Tropism is released today. And Tropism is something that, Frederick has been teasing for a couple of years. You bought it already?
Yeah, I did.
Nice. Yeah, I think everybody needs to jump in and buy this. And I did mess around, help him a little bit with the beta. And I can tell you, even though he's really sort of pitching this as a tree software, it can be used for anything. Here, you can basically grow trees, but you can grow any sort of branching structure on any mesh or even inside any mesh. It's really pretty amazing. And he's got 2 hours of training with it.
Like you your arm or something.
Yeah, like here, it's really cool. Yeah. So I actually, for me, as doing a lot of medical animations, I use this a ton for in the beta to draw collagen fibers or pre-collagen fibers and blood vessels, even though it's really, this tree software, but it's really cool.
On characters.
Yeah, veins on characters. I think the first thing you should do, everybody, is go over to Sketchfab and download the coolest, scanned dinosaur skull or something and grow some muscle fibers over it or something like that. I mean, it's really, really awesome. But yeah, he's got great training that comes with it and a ton of example scenes. It's really a comprehensive release. This was not rushed out there. It's a really fantastic release. So cool. Links are there, and check that out. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and Shane, you could talk about this as well, is that auto character setup ACS2, which Foundry had been selling on their website, is now off the Foundry website, but it's not going away or it's not going off because of any sort of internal auto character setup Foundry-made version. It's just
there's no secret conspiracy there or anything. It was actually at the request of Lukash. He's been working and getting real close to releasing ACS3. I don't know exactly when he's anticipating that, but I think it's coming relatively soon, possibly this year. In that type of a time frame. I don't want to overcommit him on anything, but essentially, he felt like it was a good time for him to just kind of more so release that on his own, and he wanted to have a bit more of control over the actual product himself. So We've taken it down off of our store page, which is no big deal on our side. But and if you bought it through us previously, it'll still be available in your My Product section. We're not changing any of that or any of that stuff in general. So yeah, I think he's announced today a bit of a discount on the existing stuff just to kind of kick his own store page off a little bit.
Yeah, so I use ACS2. I've used that for a while now, and looking forward to ACS3. We'll talk about it a little bit later when we talk about Rich's stuff, but it's I think I'm free to say that it's a major update to ACS2, and he's offering not just ACS2 is super. It's just the best thing you can get right now with MODO, but he's offering cheap upgrades as well to ACS3, discounted upgrades to ACS3 right now. So check out the links on Fondue. And we'll talk a little bit more about ACS3 a little bit later on the podcast. But I'm actually going to turn this over to Shane because the main point of this podcast is MODO Beta Release 13.1. So Shane, where can we get the beta release?
Right. Well, to be very, very ultra clear, this is not released yet. We're probably, I would say, I think a minimum of 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks out from releasing this is roughly our internal targeted milestone. So to give you a basic idea of cadence outward from this, and anybody that is an active, basically a current MODO maintenance customer or current MODO subscription customer, you have access to the betas. And we've been doing this rather continuously since about the 11 point. I don't remember when we started the public betas. I think around 11.0, maybe even a little sooner than that, somewhere in that time frame. But those betas generally come out and become available in that same time frame, that 6 to 10 week mark before we actually release. So this is, I really wanted to call attention to this release in particular. We've made some pretty significant low-level changes to the product to really focus at some of the performance issues that many have obviously brought forward over the years. In particular, the deformer performance when playing back animations has been a really tight particular focus for this release, which Matt will kind of get into in a little bit here. But I wanted to make sure, we've never really done one of these live streams around a beta. And I mainly want to make sure that everybody has a chance to go up there that's, current, check out the build, make sure you put it through its paces, let us know if there's issues. This is, kind of on the level of core level changes like what we did around the 901 timeframe. So that'll give you some type of an idea of why this is important to get up there, test it out now, and check it out. So how to get to it? Let me cover that real quick here if I can, Greg, and share my screen. Pardon the tab explosion here a little bit.
Tab storm.
Yeah. So if you go to the community site, so just community.founder.com, and then if you go to the discussion tab here, this will be a little bit different based on who you are and what your preferences are set to for the community. But if you go down to the product section here and you click on MODO, it'll filter down to just all of the MODO forum discussions. And then again, if you're an active subscriber, maintenance, or subscription customer, you should see this public beta feedback forum. Now, I'm not quite sure why we have this nested under 3.0, but underneath the 3.0 public beta discussion is the 3.1 discussions as well right now. So we actually just kind of continued on that forum instead of making a new one. But then if you go inside of here, this top level post that's kind of marked as a sticky, Mike has made the official announcement post where you can come in and get access to the download page. And then really quickly, the place to start here is the release notes. So download that, take a look at that, read through this, and this will give you probably the most complete coverage of everything that's in the release thus far, the known issues that are kind of documented thus far. Again, we're at a beta 0 right now, so this is the first beta release. We've had about maybe, 6 or so alpha releases prior to this, kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, this is now the time to get your hands on it, check it out, check out the new stuff, but also make sure that we haven't unintentionally broken anything that you were depending on from the previous release, 13.0, or if you're coming back from an older release or so. Check
How
those
do people
out.
find bugs in the public? How do they give that feedback to the Foundry?
The best way to do it, we don't have really a direct bug reporting system. Oops, there's Rich. Hi, Rich. Let me go back to my other tab. How did I get to that? Go backwards here.
Tab storm, dude.
Yeah, tab's gone crazy. So, I mean, the best way to do it is just to start a thread inside of here and discuss it first. Make sure, you can document it as best as you can. It is okay to record a video for that or attach sample files to it for us. Those things really, really help. Mike and a few other of the team members are scanning these posts kind of daily and then flagging those back to the development team to take a look at things. So it's not quite as structured as a typical bug reporting system that are, there's many of those available out there, but it is kind of the best that we have for right now. I will tell you the main things that we're focused at is if it worked in 13.0 and now it's broken because of something new we've done, those are super important bugs to us to attack as kind of a top priority. Crashing issues are another real top priority for us. Go ahead.
So let me just recap real quick here. So Shane, so can we get a link directly to the beta download page and put that in Slack and on wherever else on the forums? You can only get to this page if you're a current license holder or subscriber, correct? So can we share the link to the beta download?
I think the best way to get it from the above level is, let me just double check here really quick. I think it's in the news, into the general section under the news and announcements. Mike usually posts it there. Yeah, it's right there.
I think it is. So we'll post a link to that
link, if you will, and inside of that he has the supporting kind of private links, if you will.
Right. So we'll post a link to that page at this in the YouTube section of this live stream, as well as on Pixel Fondue, and probably show up in the Slack as well, so you can get there. Also to the discussion page, so you can post some bugs. But let's be really clear. 13.1 will have a whole slew of new features, just like 13 did. But that's not what we're really talking about today. We'll talk about that when 13.1 releases properly. We'll talk about a couple things today, but what's really going on here is Matt Cox, who's waiting patiently on the side there, basically took a triple gainer off the 9-meter board into the MODO code, and he's trying to address some long-standing issues with deformer, in particular deformer performance. A lot of things that Rich has been working on with these ultra complex rigs, and even simplified rigs or rigs like ACS. And we're also, in addition to other performance issues. And so what we're trying to do is, like Shane said, if you have scenes that work great in 13, if you load them up into 13.1 beta 0 and they're broken, that means something Matt has done in the code has broken that. Please document and try to describe what's going on, or attach the scene if you can. I will be posting a couple of scenes with like a school of hammerhead sharks and another one with the cuttlefish. There's a couple of other cool character motion capture scenes will get posted that people can download and test out the performance updates in 13.1's beta 0 that we'll talk about here in a second. It would be nice to kind of get an idea, report your findings on Slack or whatever to see how those are panning out across different systems. Matt, so if you want to speak, let's go over to Matt here now. Maybe speak a little bit into detail about what you're doing with these updates in 13.1 and what so the collaboration between you and Rich and this back and forth in this attempt to really speed up the performance.
One quick thing before we overinflate Matt's ego here. I just wanted to make it clear. He wasn't the only one making all these changes. It was very much a team effort. But we will, by the way, we'll blame all the bugs on Matt. And that he's the one that has to fix them all.
Yes, yeah, the entire MODO development team. Sorry, that's my fault for never bringing that up. And there are a bunch of these guys, and we should really call out these guys because they're working their butts off on this program, tackling something that, quite honestly, this is why we're having this, is no small feat. And, especially with a lot of this stuff was written probably before some of these guys even were working at Foundry. So they're really, this is where we're going. This is what people wanted. They want performance. This is what we're doing. Shane is making this public beta, so let's download it and let's test it and let's all sort of gather together here. This is a small community, let's really pitch in and make this better. So Matt, what in particular are we trying to test here?
So when we looked at kind of 13 and before, the kind of performance problems we're seeing, the big cost was generating the surface for drawing. So essentially, deformation's super fast, really nicely threaded, evaluation super fast. But when we actually have the final mesh and we want to get it on the screen, that's when performance kind of hit the floor really slow.
So you're calculating up through the mesh operations stack very quickly. The deformers are calculating quickly. That mesh, after all these calculations are done, has to be prepared to be.
It has to be triangulated. You have to calculate normals. You have to calculate positions, UV derivatives, all the kind of stuff that the GPU, the card, expects to be able to put something on the screen. And that was where it was really slow. So the focus for 13.1 was mostly on face polygons and looking at how we could optimize that path through the system. So don't want to get too technical, but essentially we were doing a lot of things kind of per element, but we looked into doing batching. We looked into doing kind of streamlined memory allocation. So we're just doing things a lot more efficiently for the hardware. We're looking at on face polygons, we're seeing performance improvements about 4x on our test scenes, so great improvements there. And a lot of it has been about building a foundation so we can apply the same principles to the other polygon types in future releases. So as I say, the focus has been on face polygons, but we've built that kind of that foundation level so we can grow on it for years to come. To kind of give you an idea of the scope of the changes involved here, I mean, Shane's talked about the complexity of these changes. Large parts of the system have just been rewritten from scratch. So all the face polygon calculation is just entirely new code. A lot of the kind of bounding box generation, surface generation, all new code. So this is very low level, big, deep changes. So I would say what we're looking for for testers is, let us know what performance improvements you're seeing in particular hardware, but also if anything kind of looks odd, or if anything isn't drawing, or if you're seeing things that don't look the same on the screen as they did in 13, that's definitely something to flag up to us because we'd really like to know about that. As well as those changes, we've made a bunch of other optimizations in the system. So when you, for example, make a change in MODO, we trigger a bunch of events in the system. So we can do things like update the UI. And that could potentially be millions of events. So we've done a lot of work to reduce that down because the fewer events you have, kind of the fewer things that are going on every time you tweak a setting or you pull a tool handle or something like that. So it improves performance significantly. We've also made some big improvements to the timeline. So we're not redrawing the timeline every time. And that might seem like a minor thing, but it had, again, significant improvements to the kind of performance when you had the full MODO UI there. Yeah.
Yeah, the interactivity there really improved things.
Yeah.
And same with event storms. That's where you kind of feel event storms more so than see it in any frames per second counter. It's making the application feel snappier and things like that.
Yeah. So yeah, we've also done. I mean, a lot of these things are quite difficult to talk about without getting too technical. We've done a lot of work around threading. So as I said before, the deformation system is very well threaded, but we've kind of made it a little smarter about allocating threads and things like that. So you should see a lot of improvements there. Around deformation on kind of machines with lots of threads. So.
Lots of threads, so we can get improvements to deformation on machines with lots of threads. One of the things I think would be nice if people could test, and some of the things that some of the beta testers going back and forth over at Pixel Fondue are doing is testing some of these scenes and seeing what the difference is between faster CPUs and faster GPUs, because I think there's some confusion on what's going to give you the best performance. Is it going to be a 2080 Ti or a 8-core system or a 4-core system with a really high clock rate, or a 32-core system with a lower clock rate?
Sure.
And so now we may not know right now until we really get this out there and people start banging on this. But some of these calculations are necessarily some of these bottlenecks previously may have been CPU related before sending to a very fast GPU, correct?
Yes and no. So to be clear, the calculation is all CPU bound. We're not doing any of the calculation on the GPU.
Right.
Now we still have to push that to the card, but we're still pushing the same amount of data to the card. It was the calculating the data that we're going to send that was the bottleneck. So if you've got a great GPU in there, you're not going to see major benefits for the deformation code.
Major differences.
Major differences, yeah. I would say as well, for this release, the CPU code is still single-threaded. So if you have a great single-threaded machine, something like an iMac, not an iMac Pro, but the standard iMac, you're going to see good improvements, great improvements. However, the work has been done as part of this to allow it to be threadable easily, the surface generation. There's additional work on the other polygon types that needs to be done before we can get there, but the foundational work to allow us to easily parallelize this has been done, and that's one of the key goals, because adding more threads into the mix is definite when we want to get to.
So we're going to see more benefits along additional releases of MODO, but we need to make sure all these foundational changes you're making here are working and not breaking things in a major way. And so that's one of the reasons, again, we're trying to get people on here and really everybody just download beta 13.1 beta 0, load up some of the test scenes that we'll put up there, also some of your old scenes, and test some of these things that that Matt's talking about. Rich, Rich has been torturing this system, so I'm going to let Rich kind of talk a little bit here.
What's nice, there's a couple of things. First, that what this proves in a real way is that the Foundry is committed to making MODO faster, right? Like, to me, what's been great is seeing this. Like, it is a ton of work to gut an entire subsystem to get you not even all the way there yet, right? Like, we're seeing huge speed increases and things with what Matt and the guys have done, and it's great, and I can see it in a real way when I'm testing. And I know there's still a ton more to go, and so do they. But it takes a real commitment to say, all right, we're going to the bottom, all the way to the bottom, and changing a subsystem. And that, I think, is why we're doing this video, is we need to test it to make sure that wherever it has touched is still stable, so they can continue to build on top of it.
Right. We don't want to go too far with that process. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody out there in the MODO world wants us to avoid another similar situation like we had with 901, including us. So we want to make sure that, again, there's plenty of time for you guys to take a look at these changes and kind of help us help you as best as possible before that release, comes along. I sitting here listening to this, it feels a bit like it's a doomsday scenario already, but I wouldn't be here today if it was. Actually, the beta 0 is been performing actually quite well. We've had it in circulation already a week now, and in general, the crash data that we're seeing come back is a bit better than average. It's not anything out of the ordinary, especially for a beta 0. And the response so far from the community has been really, really positive. So I'll kind of leave that to you and Rich, Greg. Tell me.
Well, yeah, this is an all hands on deck call just to test it. Like, I've been testing 13.1 for a little bit here. I can confirm it's like 4 times faster than 13.0. It's like day and night for again, like, we'll load up some scenes here. You'll put it on one, and you put it on the other. Like, oh my god, it's like 4 times faster.
But this is like preventive maintenance, right? It's like, no, it's not doom and gloom. It's great, but why don't we go and do the testing now to find the problems so that we don't find ourselves in trouble down the road? So this is, get your oil changed, guys. It's like that's what this feels like. Just this is good stuff. And to your point, Greg, yeah, I've seen the rig that I'm building would not be possible without these changes. In my opinion, like the speed required and the throughput required to be able to evaluate the kind of stuff that I'm trying to put together just honestly wouldn't have worked before. So the 13.1 branch is freaking awesome. Like, I'm extremely excited because I'm able to do some things that I didn't think I really could do before.
Well, Matt,
you're here because I mean, I asked you to come onto this feed because you're building some of the most complicated stuff from a rigging and character animation workflow that I've ever actually seen done in any application, to be honest. And it's really, really super impressive. And we're just happy to be a part of that process with you, and trying our best to make sure that you're successful with that journey too.
Well, I appreciate it, and I need to return kudos. You guys have done an amazing job of listening to me and putting up with me and allowing me to go down these rabbit holes and find things. So yeah, it's been really awesome, because this is not to do things at this kind of level of, and I should say complexity with the goal of control. It's not just making things complicated. It's not a million spheres moving around, right? It's like there's a lot of complexity built into the rigs that I'm creating so that you can get the kind of control that I want to see on the other side. And that takes a real, like, us working together. It was like, all right, here's what I'm trying to do and why, and show you, see it, go, okay, cool, it makes sense. Now the request has context. We're working back and forth. It's not just, hey, I need all of this stuff. It's
yeah, that's tough. I feel for the developers often when they get the tons of random requests, and here, yeah, how it is, and I'm guilty of that as well. So just for a broader context, if you followed some of Rich's work on Pixel Fondue, he's got a whole series showing off this amazing facial animation rig, stuff honestly that I didn't even know you could do in Modo, and I thought I kind of knew this program inside and out. And so he's any single component of this facial animation rig, whether it's the lips, the tongue, the eyes, the brows, the jaw, he's broken these down into different components. They're all absolutely amazing. And then you can actually bring all these things together. So rigging, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the Rigging Master Course 3. Now, Rigging Master Course 3, Rigging Master Course 2, ACS 3, correct?
No, it's RMC 3. But
what is our RMC 3? Was there an RMC 2? Okay.
There was.
Almost
at the same time, both him and Lukasz seem to be secretly running in parallel over these years.
RMC 3, ACS 3. Have you and Lukasz been talking at all?
Yes, I have, and I don't want to take away from the focus of our talk here, but I will say that yes, that Lukasz and I have been talking about the commercial versions of the rigs that I'm building are going to fit into ACS 3. So you will be able to use ACS to deploy my rigs on characters. That's the goal. There might be some built-in limitations when you've got to use an auto rigging tool, but the idea is to get you somewhere even faster using his tool set so that you can start animating quickly. But using the order of operations based rigging system that I'm, or methodology that I'm putting together with my rigs.
So it is an exciting time for Modo, where Modo is very well established, obviously, in modeling, design work, and rendering, and a lot of what I would call object animation. A lot of the stuff I do at Sabertooth Productions, we're doing product animations and things like that, and product tours and that type of animation work. But with a combination of new kits coming out, like ACS 3 and the Rigging Master Course 3, and some of these foundational changes in Modo, we're seeing a lot of opportunities. And even Character Box, Matt Mearsbergen has put up some good tutorials on Character Box, and they're coming up with some additional releases as well. All of these things are going to benefit from this faster deformation workflow and Modo, and it's really opening up a whole new field for Modo to do animation work and character animation work in particular.
Yeah, the technology in Modo has always been pretty awesome, and what it can do has been amazing stuff, right? And this layer deformation system will allow you to do some amazing things. And with the mesh ops being added into that same system, you can rig and generate geometry and do all this cool stuff. It's all been about getting the performance to a point when you could deploy it in a meaningful way at scale. And it feels like now the Foundry is committed to doing this. Matt, all the work you've done and everybody else has done is now allowing us to realize basically the dream of what's been in there for so long. So
it kind of came about in that way too. Like we've been on this kind of march for, you know, a long time of adding more and more features and functionality and things like that. And we honestly haven't taken a solid pause like this to go back and you know, refine and tweak and optimize the underlying performance of it. So there's quite a bit that can be done there, and we have a lot more plans. What we want to go even beyond this, and as we look into 13.2, it'll be kind of along the same vein as 13.1 is, and it'll be a lot. You know, I wouldn't say a lot fewer features, but it'll be fewer features with a, you know, a larger focus on kind of this underlying performance rework of things, and you know, again, a continuous push towards, you know, better, faster, more stable Modo.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of things here. Well, one of the things Rich mentioned is that Modo's had some amazing features for a long time. In fact, there's been a ton of just really great animation features in Modo that haven't necessarily been leveraged because of some of the performance bottlenecks that Matt had talked about earlier. Mark Brown, right, is still working on the animation sections in Modo, and you've seen improvements that we have now. We can layer up animations in Modo. You see this moving towards a full sort of NLE type system. And we have let's throw a bone out there and talk about one of the new features in 13.1, which is we've had weight containers in the past, which is really a feature pretty exclusive to Modo, I think. And let Rich just give a quick overview of what that is if you don't know what a weight container is. But in 13.1, we're also introducing something called a morph container. And again, Rich, why don't we talk to us a little bit about what weight containers are, what a morph container is, and how this helps people getting into rigging and portability between characters. One of the things that people really want to do, what I've noticed that people want to do, they want to load up their model and they want to animate it. There's all this stuff in and not everybody has a Rich Hurrey sitting behind them to get it ready to be animated, right? So there's this whole middle part that we want to make as fast and easy and flexible as possible, the rigging aspect of it. And so, Rich, talk about what weight containers are and how you've used them on these facial rig setups, and then what a morph container is and how that's going to help as well.
Okay, well, let's first say that rigging is important and it's its own art form, and it is not a means to an end. It is the means to the end.
I will make your job obsolete if it's the last thing I do.
So
some AI bot is going to do this for us.
Oh my gosh! All right, well, it's fine. It's fine. I get what I want to do with, and what I'm building into these rigs that are going to be part of the rigging master course is eliminate the technical pain of rigging so that you, Greg, can focus on the art of rigging and making great shapes and bringing your characters to life, so that the part that you don't like about rigging, I can solve for you. It's the artistic side that you really want to get to so that you can make great characters. So rigging is important. Let's just all say that out loud.
Rigging is important. And how do weight containers help rigging?
So let's talk about this. So one thing that's really nice about Modo's deformation system is that it is a serial deformation system, right? So the idea is in a skin weight environment, you're dealing with the normalized weighting, which means if I've got two joints and I add weight to one joint, it is going to subtract weights from the other joint, so that no matter what you do, you end up with a normalized system and all the points move evenly. The win in this is it's very simple. You add a new joint, you add weights, it subtracts it for the things around it, and you never have to worry about double transformations. And typically it's a pretty quick to evaluate. Modo deformation system says, look, I'm going to say do this deformer, then this deformer, then this deformer, and evaluate them in order. What that means is that my weighting can be anything I want it to be. I don't have to worry about if weights for my jaw, let's say, are overlapping with joint weights for my eyelids or my eyebrows. So that, and what weight containers do is says, all right, I'm going to create a weight map for my jaw, but I want to be able to abstract that away so that I don't have to have my mesh in the scene at the same time. So I can build a whole rig and say, I'm going to take a weight container, I'm going to wire it to my deformer so that when you load my rig into your scene with your character, then you just add the points that you want the jaw to move into the weight container and it automatically flows into the rig.
So the weight container is holding weight data, and you can add points from whatever meshes you happen to drag into the scene into that container, which it'll marry up to the weight data and feed that back into your rig. Is that a good way?
What really saying is, here is a place that I know you want to add weights to, and I automatically connect it into all the deformers so that you don't have to think about it. You just select the weight container, add the points, and know. Shane just got a phone call.
Skype.
But yeah, so what a weight container is a mesh independent weight map is really what it is. It's just waiting for you to toss the points in. What's nice too is that any number of meshes, when you add their points to the weight container, will automatically make connections to those meshes and flow them into the deformer as well.
So if I have an animated dragon using weight containers for the weight data, instead of having that data built into every point in the mesh, I'm using weight containers instead. I can toss that dragon and throw in an ogre, or well, maybe something what's a similar body type, add those points to
Wyvern.
What's that?
A wyvern or whatever.
Oh, a wyvern. Wyvern. I'm trying to remember my Dungeons and Dragons, perhaps a demon with wings. Anyway, throw that into throw those points into the weight containers, and it'll flow right through your rig. And a lot of that work is done for you. You're not painting weights on all these different creatures and stuff. You can swap out meshes in a much easier fashion. Correct?
Yeah, you got it almost right. You're still going to need to adjust the weights, but you
fine tune them, of course. Yeah,
but you don't need to worry about connecting the rig up to it. So the idea is that when you have let's just take an arm, right? So if I know I've got a joint for my arm and there's weights for the upper arm and there's weights for the wrist and everything, you have to still rig your character. But what's nice is you can take that mesh, throw it away, bring a new mesh, and all you have to do is add wrist points into the wrist weight container, and you know it's going to move right. You still got to clean up the weights and make it right. You still have to do the art part of that. And there are ways to transfer meshes, and that's a different topic. But the idea is I'm not making the weight map connection to my deformers. I'm making a weight container connection to my deformers so that my deformers and my rig are portable.
So in a similar way, where a vertex or a point in MODO can hold weight information, it can also hold morph information.
Right.
And so one of the things to make this more flexible and allow you to create these sort of independent rigs, we want to abstract morph information, just like we've abstracted weighting information. Right. So how does a weight morph container work?
Well, I'll say this. Basically, what MODO is doing now is kind of taking the container idea and expanding that beyond weights, right? So the first step in that is morphs, and it's exactly to your point. It is saying that I want to do a shape correction. This is the context of how I'm going to use it, right? So if I'm going to do something like an elbow, we'll bring that up again. When I rotate this, I need to take sculpting to make the shapes exactly right at where this intersection piece is. I'm going to use a morph to do that. So what you want to do is that when you're connecting the rotation of your joint to a shape correction, which in MODO is a morph influence, right? Before in 13.0, I would have to, all right, I've given you, Greg, my rig, but if you want to make this shape correction, you got to go to the mesh, you got to add a morph, you got to then go to your morph influence and then select it. Then you could go in and make your change to it, right? You've got to dig into the rig to figure out what you have to connect. But with a morph container, you just rotate the elbow, add points to your morph container. I've already set up the relationships. I've already connected all the dots. And then you just pull the points when you have the morph container selected. And what you're doing is adding morph offsets. Deselect the morph container, and now you're back into normal. So it allows you to easily add a shape correction to your character and any number of characters that use this rig without having to go in and dig down deep. It's abstracting how to assign the points that you want to morph instead of having to do it by hand each time.
Right. So essentially, when you're creating these rigs and these sophisticated rigs where you're trying to get the exact shape you want, it's not just putting in joints and rotating them and then boom, everything's awesome. we really want a very exacting shape. So it's a combination of joints and some morphs to shape correct after that joint rotation to get the shape that you want. And with a morph container, much like a weight container, you're able to, you don't have to re-rig these up every time you bring a new rigging or something. You can have a rig with weight containers and morph containers built into this rig. All the wiring is there. You just have to fill those containers up with points from the mesh.
That's
and do a little bit of tweaking, probably, like you mentioned with the weight tools, which is super easy in Modo. And so anyway, basically, again, it helps us get from loading the model and bringing in a rig and fitting this stuff up and tweaking and then animating much more quickly. And we'll have these, sort of rigging experts helping us in between with these master rigs that you're going to be releasing with RMC3.
Yeah. The big takeaway is Modo is unique in that it allows you to layer your deformations in a way that's independent of joints. And then you can abstract that weighting with weight containers and separate out, things for the shaping with morph containers, so that you can build a rig that's portable and you can dump new meshes into it. So it's a very production mindedness kind of idea, that we assume that these rigs are going to be portable and reusable, and be used multiple times, and that the mesh is going to change. And that's how real production works, right? If you've got a character pipeline, it's like my master rig should never change. But I mean, it will, obviously, but your characters always changing. You always have new characters and new things that you're dropping into the system. So this allows for that abstraction to happen in a much easier way.
Yeah, I really see this as a great, out of focus, foundation for using Modo in that part of the pipeline. Modo, of course, is already used, like you mentioned, all over the pipeline for modeling and UVing and design phase and rendering. But it's had all these fantastic tools in between with just these rigging tools that are unique to Modo. It's not really, I wouldn't even call it a rigging tool, but this out of order deformation stack. Yeah, as well as some unique animation tools. And now with some performance updates, you're going to see Modo, especially with a great starting place, like a advanced character setup rig or a rigging master course rig, a place to start and a demo scene to start, or an actual usable rig to start with. And with the addition of weight map containers and morph map containers, being able to get your model into an animation ready situation much more quickly than having to dig into the schematic and do stuff you maybe don't want to do, even though it's something Modo's good at. And I'm really excited to see where this is going to go with a lot of studios picking up Modo and using it for this part of the pipeline, and really sort of expanding what really Modo's brand a bit outside of modeling and rendering. I would think, Shane, you would be interested in this, into really this really sort of unique all-purpose animation program.
Yeah, I don't personally know of anything else on the market, on the commercial market anyway, that kind of has. There may be something out there. I'm not that tuned into this particular space, but I don't know of anything else out there that really has this level of abstraction between the rig and the mesh. And it is subtle. Like, there's other things out there with cluster weighting, and you can obviously do deformers along with morphs and things like that in a lot of other systems. But it's really it's very difficult to describe, but once you see it in action, it's really extracted between the mesh and that rig and those weights. And that gives you just, especially in a facial rig scenario, it gives you just this really humanistic subtlety of points being influenced by multiple different bones moving in the face. And that's really hard to come by with any other system out there that I've seen.
Yeah, the word I like to use is unbounded. When you're dealing with a system that isn't, that the skin weight isn't the foundation of your deformation deployment, like at the end, is that you don't have to worry about the space in between joints. You can move your effect out past it. And I have this really cool, which I haven't shared with everybody yet, which I'm going to share. I did this whole time lapse of me working through building the rig and showing that in a real way, like when you rotate your jaw and you're tugging on points in the top of the head so that you get these little tiny movements when your jaw opens. And that's really hard to do in a skin-based system, a joint-based system, because how do you get these joints to move a tiny little bit when you're moving the jaw? But with this kind of system, I just make the weight look clean. Now, I have to make sure they all add up nice, right? There's still work to be done to balance, but I'm not bounded. I can make the face as fleshy as I want, and MODO's deformation system really allows this to happen in a way that's much easier than other systems I've used.
So, Matt, is anything else you want people to focus on in this beta release in terms of testing, besides bringing in old scenes and seeing how they perform and if they crash, or bringing in some of the sample scenes we're going to put out there and seeing what the performance is? Anything with mesh operations or anything like that that you want to, just get some users banging on so you can, see if anything's broken?
I don't think so. I think the main focus is going to be on the kind of, as I said before, performance and checking it all draws okay. Checking tools and things like that just work, on your meshes and things like that. We're doing a lot of, obviously, internal testing around all of this, but any kind of extra coverage on your scenes would be great. I would just say, though, I was just going to share my screen for a second and show you how you can. No.
Oh, he can help himself.
I was just going to show you really quickly how you can measure performance in MODO, because a lot of people might not know how to do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So, what I'll do is I'll just bring up, I think, okay. So within the MODO kind of UI, within the MODO UI, this is the kind of standard one that launches when you start MODO. If you press the time button at the bottom to bring up the timeline. By the way, having this visible in previous releases would kind of hurt animation performance significantly. It has no effect now, so that's really, really good. If you really want to see how well kind of the performance is, the kind of true speed, you want to turn off play real time and also ensure that cache deformers is turned off. For kind of actually using the software, it's best to have play real time on, because obviously that maintains the scene frame rate by either skipping frames or kind of by skipping frames.
So if your scene is set to 24 or 30 frames per second and you have play real time ticked like it defaults to, it's even if you're capable of playing 200 frames per second, it's only going to play 30. So you got to turn that off to see what the performance improvement
what the true performance is. So make sure that's turned off and make sure you're not caching deformers, because obviously you're going to get an unrealistic result there. And then you can either type in the bottom here in the command history, or you can go to System and Evaluate and just type in GL meter. So that's GLMETER, and hit OK. And you'll see then you get this number displayed at the bottom, and you'll get a progress bar when it starts drawing. So if we just hit play now, and you'll see the kind of progress bar, the bar filling up, showing us that we're getting about 20 frames a second on that. So that's the easiest way to kind of measure what kind of results you're seeing. So try that on your rigs and try that on your scenes, and let us know, along with ideally the specs of your machine. So how much RAM you've got, processors, whether you're on Windows, Mac. If you're posting on there and you're seeing something like everyone else is saying, I'm seeing a 4x improvement, and you're not, please let us know the specs of your machine, because then we can, look into that a little bit more and find out, why you're not seeing the same improvements. Equally, if you're seeing vastly better, let us know that as well, because that's also good. So yeah, that's the way.
Awesome. Okay, so and we'll put down some instructions. I think what I'll do at Pixel Fondue is just create a page with. Whoops, let me take that off there, and just create a page with some scenes you can download. So, like I said, I'll volunteer a couple of scenes from Sabretooth, and maybe Rich have a scene or two, or and we'll put them out there that people can just download the demo, download the scene, load it up, try it with 13.0 side by side, and kind of see the difference. Post your specs, post the FPS,
right?
And we'll see where we're going with that.
Somebody was asking, it's zipped through here. I was looking, Volker Troy, about getting a sample scene of order of operation stuff, and the Ballman rig has been in there since 601. So that is exactly a perfect example of how you layer deformations together and get it in the system. So
that's just in the asset directory of every
just
shipping Modo, right? So that's already there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I would say though, it is an amazing scene. But if you're using it as an example of how to go about setting these things up, it will probably, you know, make your eyes bleed from the complexity of the schematic.
Dude, that was before there was a schematic, right? No, there was a schematic.
There was. No, there wasn't at that time, I don't think.
Yeah, so that was a big, or I didn't have different workspaces, so I had to do it all in one big schematic. So maybe I should do a new version and give that out. Maybe just to make it easier.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was what. So okay, so let's. I don't know, Shane. Is there anything else? I mean, I think we got through what your goal was to get this out there.
I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is everybody sees, you know, kind of the headlines that this is a performance release, and they think it's going to magically fix everything that they've ever had an issue with in performance. And you know, please be sensitive that, you know, performance means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Yeah, your mileage may vary with these changes. Now, with that said, some of the things that we have done, like some of the event storms improvements, some of the threading improvements that we've done, Joe's done a number of UI improvements. Duncan's done some AVP improvements. There's actually there's even been some rendering improvements, and even throughout even preview to a certain extent, and how the scene is prepared for preview has been improved. So there are kind of a lot of smaller, wider spread things that we've done in this particular release, but don't necessarily assume that it's going to magically fix everything. I think performance is something that with any application, it's something that you always chase, and we just, with the current time in Modo's life, we felt like this was a really good point to pause and put a big serious focus behind it for at least 2 releases, maybe 3. We'll see how it goes after this one kind of gets out into the wild here in the next few weeks and stuff.
Well, like you said earlier, you made the commitment. The only way forward is forward. So we're moving forward, and this
we made that decision like literally 3 or 4 days ago, right, Matt?
Yeah.
We're on this branch now, and we're just kind of all in at this point. So yeah, I mean, Matt has a healthy queue of bugs to fix, and so do a lot of the other developers, and they're honestly chewing through them amazingly fast. And you know, we're going to do everything in our powers to make sure this is just as rock solid, if not better, than the last release.
Right. So again, beta 0, 13.1, and let's see where we're at. You know, Matt said earlier about some of the groundwork he's laid that will allow future improvements. There's different areas of performance improvements in Modo that Shane has talked about. One is the deformation improvements. Another one is what we call the mini item improvements, where we have many items in the scene, especially with complex CAD files or complex shader trees. Again, those are things that are aware of at Foundry and will be tackled as well. And so again, let's just this is a journey. We've taken the steps and shut the door behind us, so we're going on it, and we'll see where we're going with this. I don't know, Shane, did you want to answer any questions from the community before we go here?
I don't have that window open, but if you want to, toss something at me, feel free.
Okay, and again, this isn't the focus necessarily of this live stream, but I'll throw these out here since you guys are asking. So, and this is a legitimate question because there has not been a whole lot of render updates lately. So somebody's asking, are there big plans for Modo's renderer? Yes, no, maybe, wink, wink. I don't know where you go. I mean, that's a question.
So actually, without teasing too much, our big focus for 13.2 will be rendering on a couple different fronts. So it's a little too early for me to speak specifics of that, but that's what we're targeting around the additional stuff on the performance side. So kind of first priority is kind of shoring up the ship after this release. If there's anything that we didn't catch through this beta cycle for unforeseen reasons, those are going to be obvious priorities. But then there's kind of a core performance team that Matt's leading up amongst, I think, 4 or 5 developers. They're focused at continuing that effort for 13.2. And then Alan is working in conjunction with 3 or 4 developers as well on some really cool rendering stuff. And in addition to the rendering stuff that we've been working in collaboration with AMD on as well, that there's a lot more of that to come in the 13.2 timeframe.
I'm excited for 13.2.
Yeah, there's a few key things there peppered in there planned for Rich as well, and just character animation. In particular, I think we'll do some stuff around the graph editor and curves and stuff like that in that area.
So yeah,
we'll say no to a lot of things, but the big focus is performance and stability still for 13.2, and probably rendering as the 3rd priority there.
So I'm excited. That's the first I've heard of that, with some rendering improvements in 13.2. I will just say V-Ray Next is out for Modo, and it's flat out awesome. Yeah, it is an absolutely great program. And so if you're like me and you purchase V-Ray through Foundry, I will say this, that you need to purchase the upgrade through a reseller.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated because we don't actually, it's weird how that arrangement was set up. It's partly my fault. I'll take the blame on that. But we just only purely process payment. All of your account information and the fulfillment of the software is actually done on their side. So if you're an existing customer, it's a little harder for us to do that side of that business completely purely online. So it is just a lot better of a customer experience, and quicker and more seamless if you just process that directly through them. So we're okay with that.
So go to a reseller, and we'll actually, maybe I can get one of the guys from Chaos on the Pixel Fondue and talk about that a little bit, because that's just a huge, fantastically great update to
big release for them in the last. They started that about 1.5 years ago, I think, on 3ds Max, and it's made its way to Modo this year, and that's a big kind of revolutionary shift in the V-Ray world.
Yeah, Gideon just mentioned GPU bucket rendering in V-Ray Next is awesome. Gideon does a ton of testing for V-Ray and Octane. And I will say Octane 2018, again, absolutely amazing. Amazing. Like these, Modo is a great platform for rendering. So you're doing products, you're doing whatever you're doing. Modo is a great platform, and both V-Ray Next and Octane are just mind-blowing. And it's nice to hear that there's some rendering improvements coming as well in 13.2. Somebody else is mentioning, again, just going back to you guys, continuing to update existing tools. And there's some of this is going to be in 13.1 as well. If you're on the beta, you'll notice that. But is there going to be continued improvements with UV packing or Booleans?
Like the traditional Modo Booleans, nothing in the very near term. I mean, that could change. That could easily change. There's stuff in the backlog for that, but again, it's as we work down through it after some bugs and other things. Probably the biggest thing for Taz that we have him. He's the one that typically does a lot of that stuff. And we have him going a lot deeper with bevel tools and beveling and things like that inside of Modo. So I'm sure that'll light up the message boards out there as well. But no solid commitments on that as usual. But yeah, we're taking the feedback seriously. We've done some pretty cool things, I think, in 13.0 to offer more solutions and more controllability with bevels. Yeah, I mean, we're taking a look at all the priorities there and kind of formulating a plan at the moment for that. So there may be some of that stuff in 13.2 as well.
Can I say that there's been some big changes for me in 13.1 that I think will help people. The spline effector is basically a whole new thing now. And before you couldn't wait or fall off something along the slide of a curve parametrically in 13.0. And in 13.1 you can, and the twist and the scale is all weightable and accepts weight input. It's a totally different deformer now in a really great way.
Was that, Matt, was that part of the lacing stuff that we did?
Yeah, that was the work that Chris did.
Yeah.
He's done an awesome job on it.
Yeah. So it's hard to keep track of. Like, there's so many different ways to use these things out into the wild, but it's hard. We do as much as we can. We do a lot across a lot of different areas.
Yep.
There's a lot of big stuff in the works for Mesh Fusion as well, which is a whole nother episode of this live stream, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's some cool video released recently by William Vaughn on Mesh Fusion. There's just been a storm of shader tree videos that William put out on Pixel Fondue. That shader tree, I still think, is the most unique part of Modo, and I really think it's one of the best parts of the program. And it's something that again, like Shane, you've got a million things on your plate, but shader tree, just in terms of a distinguishing feature and in terms of a marketing effort, like Modo is so appealing to a huge crowd of people who don't want to jump into a hypershade, and they see a shader tree, which quite frankly is faster and more flexible.
The amount of control and flexibility you get with Modo shader tree is completely separates it from anything else that's out there as well.
Yeah,
that's very true. Shader tree and order operations are the two most distinct things that I think Modo brings to this kind of DCC software tool space.
And Matt, will some of these groundwork features or groundwork code you're putting into 13.1 beta 0 eventually, will these speed up shader tree evaluation or help scenes with complex shader trees?
Yeah, without a doubt. So I can't remember the specifics, but we were seeing a large improvement when manipulating the shader tree on some of the test scenes a few weeks ago, because essentially the bottleneck with the shader tree when you're making these changes is you've got to draw those changes in the GL viewport. So the faster you can do that because of these changes, the better. So there is more work we can do, but you should see some improvements.
Some of the biggest improvements were there. I mean, it was something that took in certain scenarios with really large numbers of items in the shader tree, was taking several minutes to kind of refresh the interactivity, is now milliseconds, just when you're dragging and dropping and reordering things around. So I'm pretty hopeful that'll solve a really big pain point for a lot of people that have very, very deep, complex shader networks inside of Modo.
That sounds great. Milliseconds. I like the sound of that. For people who do a lot of CAD work, I know I see Volker Troy over here on the messaging. Like, you do get large files from clients, and to get something from like a SolidWorks, you're going to have a very loaded shader tree and item list when this comes in, and any sort of speed up there when you're processing the scene and optimizing it and getting ready to render is super appreciated. And we've been going for a while here. I know we could talk about this all day. Go ahead, Shane.
Pause real quick on that one, because that is one in particular that the mileage is going to vary on that. It hasn't been a particular focus for this release. We have seen some people have really good positive improved results with those types of scenes. But for others, it's basically no change, unfortunately. So it is something still on the list and something that, is intended to be addressed. But yeah, I just kind of want to put the word of caution out there that may or may not be the truth of the story for you if you have one of those scenes.
Yeah, right. So, but that is actually but it's on the radar, and that's coming as well. And we may see that, like you mentioned. So that's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's more questions, but I know you got stuff to do. So let me know if you want to come or go.
I'm good.
I'm okay for 5 minutes. How about we put the cap at 10 after?
5 minutes. Okay. 5 minutes, people. Again, just to recap, Tropism released today, specials on ACS2 and upgrades to ACS3. So go to Pixel Fondue if you're just joining here. So check that out. These are fantastic kits put in here by people that you see on Modo Slack and in the forums and just Modo community members. And so jump in there and support them and get these awesome releases. So somebody is saying, upgrade the old IK solver ? That sounds intriguing. Anything on that?
No comment at this time.
Rich is bobbing his head around.
I said nothing.
Like a IK solver. Okay. Well, so no comment now. Seems like a logical thing maybe to update. So we'll see. Sorry, Luca, no comment. Okay. So let's see what else we have here. Lots of people talking about mop booleans and some other things, and loving the the beveling stuff. Looking for possibly something like hair shading. like for Pixar hair shaders, something similar to hair shading. I will say V-Ray does have a V-Ray Next does have a GPU accelerated hair shader. Not something I don't think you're really going to see in Octane yet, but that is available for Modo if you need it. You get V-Ray and go to town. But are we looking? So again, for characters, you got a couple of things going on besides just the rigging and performance improvements. When you're actually rendering characters, you have every character has skin cloth hair. That's something all characters have, skin cloth hair. So if we're rendering characters, are we looking at potentially some improvements for skin, cloth, and hair?
Skin, potentially. There's some stuff that's been kind of bounced around as of late with some of the subsurface rendering stuff. There's actually some really cool stuff in RPR with subsurface rendering, the Radeon Pro Render.
Radeon Pro Render, yeah.
They have some really pretty cool stuff. Greg was just showing me that. Greg Brown earlier today. Cloth is an area of an interest as well. Those are things like cloth, hair, hair furs, kind of the same category. Fluids, volumetrics, kind of more of these additional effects, if you will. They're honestly a bit further down the list for us. We got some more foundational stuff to do before we can kind of get to that level. It's not to say that we're not going to do that stuff. It's just we can't be all things to all people right now today.
And I think that's fine because, like I said, you have Modo as a rendering platform. So Radeon Pro Render, which you can download the beta right now and play with. You have access to V-Ray and V-Ray Next, and so you have access to skin and fur shaders. Multiple ways to do skin and V-Ray Next. You could do nice skin. I've done a lot of nice skin in Octane, which has just a beautiful subsurface rendering algorithm in there. So these things are available for Modo and as other renderers. And really, this is where the rest of the industry has gone anyway. Modo is really one of the last remaining programs with the awesome built-in renderer. So we'll see. I guess
those things are a little bit more specialized, and yeah, it's just it's a little harder for us to do that stuff in a generalized way that's worthwhile for the community. So those tend to be just a lot better place for third-party vendors to really focus at. Cloth in particular, there's Cyflex for Modo. I've been noodling around with that personally recently. There's a lot of pretty good solutions out there. Modo does have pretty good hair and fur, so I'm told. I haven't used that a whole lot itself, but yeah, there's without going into too much in detail, there's always a chance that stuff's going to pop onto the radar sooner than later. But for like what we're talking about today in the 13 series, those things are not on the table.
So somebody mentioned referencing. This comes up a lot. And I will say there's been a sort of a new sort of referencing lately in Modo with being able to reference shader tree items and some mesh items with a new sort of reference item.
There's reference preset materials, and I don't think it made it to this release, but we have been kind of noodling around a reference like preset mesh item as well. Where you would load a preset mesh in as kind of a reference, and you'd be able to change that kind of offline as well. And then largely some of the stuff that like Rich has been toying around with, and we were talking about earlier with morph containers and weight containers, and then having those be part of the procedural system. All these things kind of add up to creating new ways to reference and kind of stack up these assemblies, if you will, of systems inside of Modo. It's something that we know we need to go deeper on, but we're not completely ignoring that problem either. On the other hand, we're chipping away at it with a few of these other things as we kind of go along with the other agenda items that we have right now.
Yeah, I actually really like the sort of item referencing you're doing within a Modo scene. I think that's actually more immediately usable to more people than the traditional sort of referencing in scenes that other people create in a larger pipeline.
Yeah, we're trying to solve particular problems really well with both of those two things.
Yeah,
and in
Rich
particular,
wants to rig a dragon in Modo. That's what we need to get to. That's my goal, and I'm going to push you there.
Create another dragon.
We'll close the laptop and we end the conversation.
Oh, I'll build it.
I knew we were going to go too far with Rich on here.
Rich is daydreaming about being Daenerys Targaryen and blowing up a city with his dragon. All right.
It'll be an amazing assembly preset that you'll double click down and boom, dragon. That's the goal.
Did you work with Pixar? They don't know anything about dragons.
Dragon.
That doesn't mean we're not. It doesn't mean we can't. Just haven't yet.
Yeah. Has Pixar done a dragon?
I don't think they have. No.
Not that I'm aware of. Maybe now, but not. But maybe we're Onward. I wasn't on that show when I left. So.
Oh, I suppose there would be. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. So we're all over the place. I think we're done now. This is going to go up on YouTube here. I'm going to put in links to the forum page where if you're a current license holder or subscriber, you can download the beta. I'll put in links to some sample scenes, put in links to whatever else we could think of to put in links to.
Kite string.
What's that?
Kite string.
Kite string. Oh.
We didn't even talk about, which we don't need to now.
Yeah, I thought you didn't want to.
Oh, so okay. Well, this will be another. So again,
We'll do another one.
In addition to Rigging Master Course 3, Rich has been working on a bunch of stuff, and so we'll be doing another live stream on some of his other products really coming out here. So is that good, Rich?
Sure. I figured I'd throw it at the end to be funny.
Tease it at that. So there's something called Kite String. Yes. And which I've gotten a glimpse of, and quite frankly was super impressed with. And we will be talking about that at a later date, I think. So, okay. So yeah, let's sign off here. Everybody have a good afternoon. And if you're in California, keep cool. I think it's around 90 something already. So my air conditioning has kicked in though.
Thank you again, Greg, for hosting.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And Rich for joining, and Matt for joining so late. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Modo. Take care, test Modo, and I will see you on the Slacks and the forums. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.